Hello and welcome to Sim.bc, where right now it's 0140. Yes, it's 2022. It's the most bloody wonderful time of the day. It's the morning and my neighbors probably love me that I'm standing here shouting, or not shouting, but talking quite vigorously and quite loudly out in the open room, out into just a wall, because behind this lovely camera is actually a wall. Yeah, I know, it's crazy, isn't it? Anyway, just a pretext of this entire thing that I'm gonna talk about. I'm allergic to something that I haven't quite really pinpointed yet, yeah? So there might be a sneeze or two coming up. You've been pre-warned. Anyway, let's get into the bloody discussion that is so heavily uninteresting that it barely interests myself. Yeah, that is right. We're working with the raw format, which is in this case rather unfortunate, because today I'm going to talk about one of those things that came up when I was, trying to go to sleep. You're laying there, you're thinking, oh, I just had the most brilliant idea. I'm going to start working out in the morning. Then you wake up and you realize, no, that ain't never going to happen. I have the same thing, the same kind of revolution in my mind, revelation. That I was gonna talk about a specific topic, and that topic today is gonna be sometimes, right? I tend to use a word a lot in order to know it. Yeah, in order to learn it. This is what I read when I was reading my notes, yeah? Sometimes I use a word a lot when I try to get to know it. I don't know if past me is a bit of a jerk, but that ain't good enough for a video. So this is probably going to be rather short, but just some examples of these might be, well, what should we say? Existential. Existential is a new word that I learned a couple of years back, and I used it in each and every sentence that I ever got around to use it to such an extent that people were actually telling me bloody off. Yes, it's true. People were like, well, you're using this word existential quite a lot. And I'm like, do I? That's an existential crisis. And they're like, no, it's absolutely bloody not. It's not. It's absolutely not. Another one is ubiquit. Now, I never, ever use ubiquit really, except for that 1 month that I was trying to learn the bloody word. And that is because ubiquit has no real purpose in English. I mean, sure it does. It's kind of like the difference between internal and external, as I've known, yeah? And that's because I've been discussing stakeholders, and there are different kinds of stakeholders. There's internal stakeholders to a set company, and there are external stakeholders to a company. And then there are some, like unions, right, that are ubiquit stakeholders. That means they're part inside and part outside. I know, it's some exciting stuff now, isn't it? Other words that I kind of just picked up was quintessential, that I'm still not really sure what it actually means. And this is the reason for why I'm using words in sentences all of the time, using them in different perspectives, in different contexts, trying to create a sentence with a specific word. And that is because not always when you read a word's definition it's clear what it's all about, right? We've all probably been there. We've been looking up, we've been reading a book, we've been reading some course literature, some course material, whatever you have it, right? And you find a difficult word. You find, first of all, it's a sentence that you don't quite really get. So you read it like 15 different times, and then you pinpoint it down to a smaller and smaller and more narrow extent, so that you have like 1 or 2 words that you don't really get. And that is the reason for why the entire sentence falls apart. Because you're like, oh yeah, Timmy and Lisa thought that this was a good thing, but what is this thing that they're talking about? So you go to Google or you go to a dictionary or what have you, yeah? And you look up this specific word. Now, the only problem is, and it unfortunately tends to happen quite often, especially online, where you're looking at dictionaries with little to no regulation, legislation or whatever. Or regulation, you tend to find a definition of the word you didn't understand using other words that you don't quite understand. So it's just harder words. But you kind of get the gist of it, right? But you do not have that clear definition. Now, this has been the reason for me as well, or this has been the experience for me as well, that I've been looking through different hard words over the time of the course that I've been studying English on at the university level, and even before that, right? But especially at the university level, me looking up different words that I thought were hard, and then it turns out that the definition of them is even harder to comprehend than the actual word itself. So I have a general idea where I'm going, yeah? So quintessential, for instance, I'm starting to using that. It's quintessential to pack your lunch. It's not? Okay. It's quintessential for me as a person to bring this up in this context, perhaps a bit more accepted. All of these different things that you tend to carry over, or I tend to carry over, are, in order to understand what kind of reaction I get in different contexts. Sure, there's pros and cons with this method. The pros are that you get to learn it in the context. As I said, you don't only get to learn the definition, but also how you can use it and how you can be funny with it, how you can be rhetorical with it, how you can be ironic with it. Now, the obvious cons of this is that you yourself do not know when people consider it to be ironic, because you don't know if their reaction is generate, ironic, or strategic, or whatever, right? Because you do not really know what kind of reaction you're looking for with the person, right? When you are actually using the word. Now, some tactics and a strategy that I've come up with in order to actually test this, in order to actually utilize this, in order to actually get over this, what you would say, anticipation problem that, well, I'm using a bit of a word, but I do not really know the anticipation of the other person. Then I'm throwing in something that's highly controversial, like racism, for instance, and we'll try to use the word with a very racially insensitive slur, so to say. Could be anything, really. It could be if you go up to a vegan and you kind of heavily implies that they should be eating meat. In a way, just to provoke, just so that you know that the reaction that you're looking for is probably going to be a provoked reaction. The person that you're talking to is probably, in some form or fashion, going to say, that's not really how it is. And then you have to, lay out the pretext or the post-text, so to say, in this scenario, and you'll be like, I'm trying out a new word, I didn't know how you were going to react. That's why I threw out all of these different stupid opinions. And I'm really sorry to all of you out there who have been the victim and the target of me trying out new words and then not really having the time to actually say, excuse me, I was only actually trying out a bit of a word here, I didn't really mean that, which obviously isn't good networking. But if any of you happens to watch this, then that is actually how it went down most of the time, right? Anyway, when I look like a bloody idiot. Not that I'm not standing for some of my own opinions, right? Or for all of my opinions for that matter. It's just that sometimes there are things that's playing outside the frames of the rules, so to say, a bit too much. And that's because, well, I'm trying to anticipate the reaction. Anyway, to go back to the entire strategy behind this, is that you're using the word such as quintessential, for instance, and then you're trying to provoke a reaction with something else. And then, if people are like, okay, if they don't get provoked, it probably means that they reacted in a ironic way to your statement. And that probably means that quintessential, for instance, isn't a double negative. Woohoo! 2 thumbs fresh. Am I right, people? Am I right? Now, another thing that I kind of learned, and it's not always about learning something. Sometimes it's only about adapting a new word, isn't it? Because sometimes, as I said, you're looking up a new word. Other times, you just hear it. You hear it out and about. And you're thinking like, I want to learn that. I want to kind of use that. One word that I learned, or rather that I started to want to use a couple of years back now, by now, I think it was my second year of university, so that's about 2 years ago, was mate. Yeah, absolutely fell in love with the expression of mate. Just a friend of yours, a comrade or whatever. It's just a bit of a mate, It's your mate. It's me and my mate here. And that drove people to madness, because I tended to, both say mate when I was trying to say friend, or when you were saying like, hey you, I was saying like, hey mate, can you come over here, yeah? And all of those things. So I was trying to throw it in where I otherwise would have said friend. But since I wanted to learn it exactly when it works and when it not works, because I didn't know if it had any special connotation to it, for instance, that, well, you can say friend there, but you can't say mate, for instance. So in order to test that out and try that out, I said, I provoked and I created situations and sentences where I would be able to say mate, the word mate, in different contexts, simultaneously as I was having a rather normal conversation with everybody else and just calling them mates, because, well, I wanted to try and, adapt the concept of a mate to my own vocabulary. The result of this, obviously, is that I'm running around calling everybody bloody mate, right? I'm like, mate, have you seen this, mate? Mate, by the way, have you been a mate for a long time to your other mate John over there? That mate? Yeah, that mate over there. Because I have a mate who have a mate who's friends with a mate, yeah? And that's really friends. It's a mate of a mate of a mate who's a mate of his mate. But he's mating with another mate, yeah? Oh, you see that? Mating with another mate? Does that work? Does that really work? Or do you say mating with another friend? Even so, mating is is probably the wrong way of saying intercourse in this situation. But you get what I'm saying. Really trying it out. Mating. Does it become something different? Yes, it did. Obviously now, but quite surprisingly to me then. I was like, can you friending? Yeah? Can you befriend someone? Then can you be mate someone? No? Can you? But then I was like, can you mating with someone? Mating? And people are like, mating? You're mating with people? And I was like, yeah, I'm meeting new people. I'm mating with them. Yeah? What about it? And they were just like, no. that's absolutely not how it works. So, I'm not saying that it's a waterproof system. There are obvious cons to this system, and you will have to work with the idea that people are probably going to be pretty pissed with you, yeah? To put it mildly, people are going to be pissed at you at times, and they're going to be really worked up about some things that you might say, because they're like, isn't that really obvious that it's either is that way, or that it isn't, or that it should, or that it shouldn't? You know, it's either way, right? It's right or left, it's blah blah blah, yada yada, black or white. However, you do learn a lot of stuff, because as some people say, you never learn until you fail, because the greatest teacher is failure. And that's how I've operated with my language, and I gotten quite far so far, right? So far we're actually quite a long way along. But that might be also why I'm at times at like 10 or 20 videos in a row, kind of heavily utilizing one word and then skipping over and heavily utilizing another, because obviously I'm seeing this as a position, or as a possibility, or as a time when I can do that as well. So just so that you know, anyway mates, I'm gonna leave you with this, and that is a inspirational statement. Yeah, the inspirational statement in the sense of conventional. Yeah, conventional is the... Well, wouldn't it be bloody amazing if I actually knew this by heart? Because this is like when you try to show off a really funny video to one of your mates, you see, or to one of your friends. And you say like, oh, it's the funniest thing ever, it's the best thing ever. And then they're like, oh yeah, true, sure. Or, you know, rather more realistically, people are going to be like, oh, I don't really want to see it. But you're like, no, it's hilarious, it's funny, just sit down. And then you try to find it, and you don't really find it. And once you find it, the video is just loading, and you're just like, oh, I promise you it's funny. And then once it loads, you're like 45 minutes in, people are angry. People are like, well, we should have, left the apartment 20 minutes ago. We're going to be late for the party. And you're just like, but what about this though? And it's like a 9-second clip of someone being like, yeah. And you're like, oh my god. Yes, but as I was trying to say, conventional, mate, conventional is the opponent of interest. And that's supposed to be like conventional is the opponent of interesting. It really wasn't that good when I'm thinking about it. Yeah, exactly like the video. Anyway, mates, have a nice one, and I'll see you tomorrow, probably with a bit more of an interactive and deep conversation, because that tends to be the one sort of conversation we never tend to have on this channel. Even though I'm trying, we're gonna get there.